up, everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of The Wrestling Experience with Johners. So this is not my usual podcast, Wrestling with Johners, and of course there's 37 episodes in the archive, so feel free to go out and listen to any of those episodes. You can get them from Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, YouTube, Podcast Addict, Anchor, Stitcher Radio, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. We are pretty much on all popular platforms at the moment, but you're here on YouTube. This is a YouTube exclusive show with me, Johners, from Wrestling with Johners, and this is the first ever episode of The Wrestling Experience. So the Wrestling Experience, I've kind of come up with the idea, instead of my podcast episodes going way long, well over an hour, it would be kind of makes more sense to make my podcast episodes and anything else I do going forward into more manageable chunks, which is what I'm aiming to do by taking some of the content that maybe would have been on my podcast onto a YouTube series called The Wrestling Experience, not the Viking Experience. Don't get us confused with a popular WWE tag team that's just been called up to the main roster. This is the Wrestling Experience, so some of the subjects that we probably would have covered on the podcast we're going to cover here on this YouTube show, and some of the things we're going to look at today are the first two episodes of Worlds Collide, which were NXT versus NXT Alumni, so former NXT superstars that have been called up onto the main roster that are now wrestling for Raw or SmackDown against current NXT superstars, and there was 4 really good matches on I think it was Sunday's episode of Worlds Collide. And there was another episode this past Wednesday which we're going to cover as well, called Cruiserweights Collide, which had superstars from 205 Live, as you would expect, NXT, NXT UK, and there's 4 really good shows, and I can't wait to talk about that and NXT versus NXT Alumni very, very soon. We're also going to be looking at kind of the behaviour of some of the wrestlers, certainly over WrestleMania weekend. There's been a lot of wrestlers and backstage staff that have requested their release from WWE over recent weeks, certainly around WrestleMania and since WrestleMania. We spoke a lot about the Sasha Banks situation on the podcast a couple of days ago now, but we're going to be kind of talking more about some of the individuals that have requested their release or that are on their way out or have asked to be on their way out from their WWE contracts. One of the first people that I want to talk about is Brian James, brand new WWE Hall of Famer, Road Dogg, part of the D-Generation X faction from the 1990s, famous for being multi-time WWE Tag Team Champions with Billy Gunn as part of the New Age Outlaws, of course. And over the last couple of years, Brian James, Road Dogg, has been the lead writer on SmackDown, and I think I've heard some reports that he has asked to step down from being lead writer on SmackDown because he puts in a lot of hours. It's a 7-day a week, 365 job, 24/7, especially if you're the lead writer of any program such as SmackDown, where you're coming up with scripts, coming up with layouts for the program, coming up with storylines, and you're on conference calls with WWE management, Vince McMahon and whoever else, almost on a daily basis, deciding how the next show is going to go out, how the next edition of SmackDown Live is going to be put together, and then pretty much on a weekly basis, Vince McMahon gets to the arena and changes the whole format, changes segments, changes big chunks, changes pretty much the whole show on the fly. And of course, after however long Road Dogg's been doing this job, it must be exceptionally frustrating to have this happen all the time. And I think he stepped down due to kind of frustrations with the fact that he's the lead writer on SmackDown, or was the lead writer on SmackDown, and plans are always getting changed. So he's at the moment taking a leave of absence, my understanding, so that he can he's still with the company. He will almost certainly be given a different role within the business. A very, very creative person, been in the industry all of his life. His father, Bullet Bob Armstrong, as a very famous wrestler, and back in the territory days, his brothers were all in the business, and Yes, of course. Brian James, I remember seeing him wrestle back in WCW very, very briefly before he became Road Dogg. I think it was about 1994 when he came onto the WWE as Road Dogg. So he's been in the industry all of his life. He's been in the WWE for 25 years. And yeah, exceptionally talented mind for the business. But yeah, couldn't take the pressure anymore because of the constant changes from Vince McMahon. Didn't matter kind of how many hours per day he was putting into the scripts and the formatting and the layout of the show and the storylines. It would always get changed at the 11th hour. You've also got, let's see, other people that have got into a little bit of bother backstage. Pat McAfee, former NFL American football player. I don't know too much about American football, so I apologise if you do. But he has been kind of a bit of a host on the kickoff shows, in particular the NXT Takeover kickoff shows, where he would add a little bit of colour pre-show to the kickoff team, and kind of had his kind of insight into the matches and the wrestlers and what's likely to go down that night. Yeah, he was part of the kickoff show at WrestleMania, but I think there was a directive that went out ahead of WrestleMania about the type of attire, the type of wear that commentators and part of the announcing crew should be wearing, and Pat McAfee turned up in shorts. So I think he's wearing smart attire on his top half, bottom half shorts, and this was spotted by Michael Cole, who is of course the lead announcer in the WWE and in charge of all of the kind of other announcers, regardless of brand. He's very, very important, whether it be for Raw, for SmackDown, for NXT. He's kind of always there, helping to guide and to kind of lead the announcers regardless of program, and he's actually in charge of all the other announcers in the WWE. And when he spotted that Pat McAfee turned up in WrestleMania, of all shows, the biggest show of the year, certainly in the WWE, as we all know, in shorts, he kind of flipped his lid and told Pat McAfee that it was it was bad practice to wear something like that. He demanded that he get changed. Pat McAfee stood his ground, basically threatened to walk out on the show there and then, threatened to walk out on the WWE there and then. He's got nothing to lose. I'm sure he's saved his money from his NFL days, and I'm sure there's other TV gigs that he could kind of drop into as an announcer or as an expert. But it was all right as kind of a part of the pre-show announce team, whether it be for NXT takeovers or for shows such as WrestleMania, and we saw him on stage with Charlie Caruso, with the big ramp and the ring behind them both, and yes, he was there wearing shorts. And I think that because he kind of stood his ground and told Michael Cole, no, this is what I'm doing, I think Michael Cole actually stood down. I understand that Michael Cole actually apologised to Pat McAfee, but who's in the right here, who's in the wrong here? Pat McAfee shouldn't have. I'm sure he's aware of uniform policy, especially for big shows like WrestleMania. Shouldn't have turned up, or shouldn't have worn shorts to a big show like WrestleMania, surely. But then, does the WWE need to be a bit more flexible? Does the WWE need to be a bit more understanding? Should he have got permission to have worn the shorts in the first place? Yeah, I can't believe that I'm talking about two announcers arguing over somebody wearing shorts on this YouTube channel, but here we are. Then you've got one of the kind of backstage writers. There's two different stories here. One that backstage writer got fired, or one that he kind of quit on the spot during the Hall of Fame. And of course I'm on about the writer who helped put together Bret Hart's speech for the Hall of Fame ceremony a couple of Saturdays ago. That will go down as one of the more memorable Hall of Fames of all time, because of Bret Hart getting tackled to the ground by that fan, if you can call him a fan. And there's always been a directive for Hall of Fame speeches: do not mention Vince McMahon in any of your speeches. Do not mention Vince McMahon. So this writer put the script together, put the speech together for Bret Hart. They may have worked on it together, but I think on the whole it was the writer who kind of put most of it together. It mentioned Vince McMahon a couple of times in his speech. You may remember very famously that Bret Hart mentioned Vince McMahon in his speech at least a couple of occasions. And then after the speech, there were reports backstage that Vince McMahon was absolutely furious that this writer had put Vince McMahon, his name into Bret Hart's speech, and that he was going to be in big trouble or possibly going to be fired on the spot. So there's one report you may have heard on X-Pac's 12360 podcast that this writer was fired on the spot, that Vince McMahon was absolutely furious and got rid of the writer straight away. And then there's another report that says that the writer heard that Vince McMahon was furious and went up to Vince McMahon, and instead of waiting to be fired, just quit on the spot. But then, having heard this, you had all the D-Generation, X-Lot, X-Pac, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Road Dogg, Billy Gunn, who are all waiting to be inducted into the Hall of Fame later on that evening, who, with their writer, who's one of the key NXT writers, basically, they had Vince McMahon in kind of like a bit of a comedy segment to their script, to their speech, who mentioned all the way through it. Certainly the first couple of minutes it was Vince McMahon this, Vince McMahon that. You can't mention Vince McMahon, can't mention the name Vince, and they all kind of got into this comedy routine where they all mentioned Vince McMahon. So I believe it was possibly Shawn or maybe X-Pac went to Vince and said, look, we've got your name in our script, is this okay? And Vince McMahon just said, yeah, go and have fun. So the question is, was Vince McMahon furious about this writer putting Vince's name into Bret Hart's speech? Was it just a wild rumour that got blown out of all proportion? I'm sure more will come out on this as the days and weeks go on. Yeah, it sounds like it's possibly all right for one lot of people to mention Vince, and not so all right for everybody else. Yeah, I'm sure the truth is somewhere in between. And then you've got Brock Lesnar being demanding, and we know that Brock Lesnar's always been demanding. The reports are that he turned up for WrestleMania, the MetLife Stadium, on the 7th of April, a couple of weeks back, and basically demanded that they wanted to be in the main event. They wanted to go on last, and when they were shot down, he said, right, if I can't go on last, then I'm going on first. Because originally AJ Styles versus Randy Orton was meant to go on first. And that didn't happen. We were all surprised to see Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar kick off the show in what I thought was quite a good 5-minute opener. Quite a physical beatdown from Brock Lesnar on Seth Rollins to start off with, and Seth Rollins getting the upper hand firstly from a low blow and then 3 curb stomps to win the match against the Beast for Seth Rollins to be the new Universal Champion. We know all of that, and if you don't, you need to listen to Wrestling with John's episode 36, our WrestleMania review. Yeah, so Brock Lesnar being demanding, and I know that he's always been a demanding character, will he suffer any repercussions? No, because he's Brock Lesnar. Will Vince McMahon kind of pay him more and give him a more exuberant contracts and even more millions next time round? Of course he will, because Brock Lesnar is a special asset. He is a main event player. He is one of the biggest names in the industry of not just pro wrestling but of combat sports. Former UFC champion, of course, and former collegiate NCAA amateur wrestling champion, of course. But with people like Pat McAfee taking things into his own hands regarding the uniform policy, things like Brock Lesnar demanding this, demanding that. Then we spoke about Sasha Banks on the Wrestling with John's podcast, episode 37. You know, being upset along with Bayley over the fact they were losing the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. You know, why do these wrestlers feel that they can get away with it? And I know that Vince has been criticised in the past for being too tough on, being prepared to fine or suspend or possibly sack people at a drop of a hat, sometimes for no real reason at all. So where's the kind of fear factor, and why do they think they can do this? Yes, you've got AEW with their first show, Double or Nothing, next month, towards the end of May. But, for example, Sasha Banks, she's asked for her release. She'll never get her release. She's got, I think, 2 or 3 years left on her contract, and WWE are not going to release her or anybody's contract, especially not somebody like Sasha Banks. Now, it might be different for a Ty Dillinger, for example, who they had no plans for. I've never really done anything with, certainly since he came up onto the main roster. But for a Sasha Banks, she has won championships. She has been a 4 times Raw Women's Champion. Yes, they were short reigns, and I think that's part of the frustration, is that, she wasn't able to successfully defend any of those championships on any subsequent pay-per-view, and she was only able to successfully defend the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships with Bayley on one pay-per-view, which was Fastlane in March against Tamina and Nia Jax. We spoke about all of that on the podcast. But there's no way they're going to let her out of her contract. There's no way that they're going to honour her request for a release. So yeah, she could be sat on the bench for 2 or 3 years waiting out her contract to kind of expire, or she kind of knuckles down and does as she's told. Hopefully she'll be given another opportunity or opportunities, and she needs to be maybe a little bit more thankful over her position. And as I mentioned in the podcast, there's a whole ton of female talent coming up through the ranks on NXT UK, and others within the WWE main roster that may not have been given as much of an opportunity as Sasha Banks. You've only got to look at Asuka, who I believe is a much more talented wrestler than Sasha Banks, who has had opportunities but quickly taken these opportunities and chances, and championships have been taken away, just as quick as anything that's happened to Sasha Banks. But she's remained positive, and it's all about attitude at the end of the day. And I think that Sasha Banks, obviously having that poor attitude, feeling sorry for herself, or certainly that's the reports. But yeah, the behaviour of some of these wrestlers just, is a little bit concerning, to be honest with you. I think there's always been an element of that in the wrestling industry. Some people feeling they're deserving of more of a push than they're getting. Some people feeling that they should be world champion. And of course, you shouldn't be a pro wrestler, you shouldn't be in the WWE unless you've got the mindset of wanting to be a world champion in the first place. But you also have to be grateful, I suppose, for what you're offered and make the most of it. And even if you're given 5 minutes TV time per week, to make that 5 minutes count. You've only got to look at Kofi Kingston. Yes, he's had a good career in the WWE. He's had United States Championship reigns. He's had tag team title reigns, more prominently with New Day, of course. But he had to wait 11 years for his opportunity. And it wasn't an opportunity that dropped into his lap. It was an opportunity that was kind of happened organically through fan support, through chance, through luck. You could say, with Mustafa Ali and his concussion that kept him out for a while, and Kofi Kingston did really well, very nearly won a gauntlet match that earned him a spot in Elimination Chamber, that then kind of sparked Kofi Mania, and Kofi Mania went wild, and it culminated at WrestleMania, where he beat Daniel Bryan in that epic match, possibly one of the best matches of the entire, not just of WrestleMania, but of the entire WrestleMania weekend. So if you wait out your time, if you're patient, if you do everything that's asked of you, I'm sure that the opportunities will come to your way, and the cream always rises to the top. And I think there's, I suppose, like in any industry, in any business, wherever you work in, attitude is really, really important. And with the right attitude, I think that can kind of get you noticed more than more than having a poor attitude. You've only got to look at Alexander Wolf, for example. Now, we'll talk more about Alexander Wolf in a bit, but he has requested his release from the WWE. He put out a statement on social media, and I'll read that to you. So it says, we, Sanity, made our TV debut in October 2016 for NXT at Full Sail University in Orlando, Florida. We had a great time in NXT and we accomplished a lot. They were NXT Tag Team Champions, NXT Tag Team of the Year 2017, first ever NXT/WWE War Games match back in 2017. That would have been performed in front of about 15,000 people at a sold-out takeover pay-per-view, growing together as athletes and performers. The whole group is like a family to me. I made 3 good friends over the last 3 years. I'm really grateful for that. It was without a doubt a great time. Thank you guys for everything. He goes on to say thank you to the entire SmackDown locker room. Thank you for the good vibes, laughs and wisdom. I appreciate all of you and I wish you all the very best for your careers. Thank you to the fans who supported us and never stopped believing in us. I appreciate you, as well as, trust me, I speak for all 4 of us in Sanity. It's time to leave this behind and walk a different path. RIP Sanity, goodbye, #WWE. So that's Alexander Wolf, who, along with other members of Sanity, Killian Dane, Eric Young, Nikki Cross, they were utilised in NXT. As he said there, they were part of the first ever War Games match, for first ever WWE War Games match that was part of NXT War Games at the end of 2017. He was a key member of the Sanity stable, as we all know. But Sanity have been upon the main roster for over a year now. I think it was just after WrestleMania 2018, WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans, where they were brought up. I can probably only count on one hand the number of times that they were actually seen on WWE TV, and yeah, it would be a shame. I mean, Alexander Wolf was brought up because of his success in Europe, predominantly WXW in Germany, and was never really fully utilised, certainly in the main roster, and the same goes for the other members of Sanity. We saw, as part of the Superstar shake-up this week, that Eric Young has been called up onto the main roster. No other mention of Killian Dane. No real mention of Nikki Cross. I think she might be part of the SmackDown roster, actually. Yeah, it's strange because I think Sanity as a faction, they had some promise. They did show some potential. Certainly did a lot in NXT, but I think that when they came up onto the main roster, maybe it was seen as a bit of a dated gimmick. Possibly too similar to the Wyatt family, possibly too similar to other acts, other gimmicks that we've seen in the past. And then we've got Luke Harper, for example. So Luke Harper has also requested his release. Now, he's been out injured up until recently. We saw him make his return at WWE WrestleMania Fan Access. We'll talk more about that in a minute because he does appear in NXT versus NXT Alumni Worlds Collide, and we'll talk about his match very soon. And then we saw him at WrestleMania as part of the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Yeah, Luke Harper, he's had a glowing career. Former NXT Tag Champions with Eric Rowan as part of the Wyatts. Former Intercontinental Champion in 2016. SmackDown Tag Team Champion with Rowan as part of the Bludgeon Brothers, and they won the title at WrestleMania 34 last year in New Orleans. But he has had multiple injuries. So has Eric Rowan, but it seems like when Eric Rowan is out injured, they do nothing with Luke Harper, and when Luke Harper is out injured, they bring Eric Rowan in to be the kind of heavy for Daniel Bryan. So, as I mentioned, he made his long-awaited return at Access, and then at WrestleMania as part of the Royal Rumble. He also put out a statement on social media saying, as of this evening, I've requested a release from WWE. The past 6 years have been simply amazing journey around the world and back with lifelong friends and family. I'm proud of it all, proud to say I shared the ring with my co-workers. This decision is difficult, as it was, feels right for myself and WWE. My goal in the future is to continue to grow as a performer and person and continue to make my family proud. Thank you from the bottom of WWE. Thank you to the fans for your undying support. Thank you for everything. Like I say, these wrestlers, Luke Harper might get his release because I don't think they've really got any plans for him. I think Alexander Wolf may get his release, but then there's rumours that Alexander Wolf, there might be a bit of a swerve, bit of a change of plans, and that he might be staying with WWE. But still, Sasha Banks, I don't think she'll get her release. And as I mentioned, there is the AEW factor, there is the AEW option, and I think that for as long as there is that threat, that option of AEW and kind of a new big company that's almost certainly going to have a big TV deal that's going to be announced very soon, wrestlers are being offered vast contracts, and I think somebody like a Luke Harper could end up appearing on the show. Sasha Banks, I think because of AEW, will not be granted her release, so she'll either come and knuckle down on the WWE roster, or sit on the sidelines for however long until her contract runs out. But not everybody can be WWE champion. Not everybody could be, WWE Women's Champion. Sometimes you have to play your part. Sometimes you have to be part of the bigger picture. I think part of the problem is that the WWE have too many wrestlers and not enough to do with each of them. So yes, I think I mentioned in a previous episode of Wrestling with Johners, between NXT, NXT UK, 205 Live, Raw and SmackDown, and developmental as a thing, as an entity, there's over 200 wrestlers. I think it was last reported there was 240 wrestlers that were signed to contracts, and yeah, the WWE are signing up a lot of very, very talented indie wrestlers to basically prevent them from signing with AEW. They're signing their current talent to long-term contracts to prevent them from signing with AEW. So the WWE are concerned. They are watching AEW very closely. They are possibly threatened by AEW. You've had other WWE wrestlers such as Ty Dillinger granted his release. He was very vocal on social media about wanting to leave, and he was granted his release. You've had Mike and Maria Kanellis threatened to leave, and then renege on whatever threat they put out there, saying that they didn't want to stay with WWE because they were being underutilised. Since then, we've seen a lot more of Mike Kanellis on 205 Live. We've seen Maria Kanellis in the Women's Battle Royal at WrestleMania. The club, which are massively underutilised, Gallows and Anderson. If they're not on pre-show matches before pay-per-views or in random battle royals or Andre the Giant battle royals, then they're not shown at all. They're not featured at all, which is such a shame considering that you've got this whole Japan Bullet Club connection where they could do some great things with AJ Styles and with Finn Balor, and that's never really been explored. The Revival, who made it very clear that they wanted to leave, and in fact I think they did threaten to leave or ask for their release after a show not too long ago, and then since then they've been given other opportunities. They've been given the Raw Tag Team Championships, and they did well as champions. Didn't win many matches, but they were heels. Heels don't tend to win all the matches, but they did win the important one at Fastlane. They did lose them to Hawkins and Bride at WrestleMania. But they have been used in a more prominent position lately, of course. Then you've got Dean Ambrose, who will be leaving. He's not signed a new contract. I don't think the WWE put an awful lot of effort into trying to retain his services. He'll probably end up in AEW. There has been report that he's been offered a multi-million-dollar contract. Take that with a pinch of salt, but they are offering huge contracts. But Dean Ambrose is just about to finish up his WWE contract, and one of the founding members of the Shield, formerly Johnny Moxley on the Independents, and no doubt he'll be turning up in AEW very, very soon. Let's have a look at Worlds Collide anyway. So we've had 2 episodes from Worlds Collide. I think there's another 1 or 2 yet to come. I think we've got Women Collide, which has got a lot of talent from NXT UK, NXT, some main roster women performers talent that are going to be part of that show. But we've had 2 episodes of Worlds Collide. The first one was NXT versus NXT Alumni. Now, the first match was Cassius Ohno versus Aiden English. Now, we're more used to seeing Aiden English behind a mic, behind a commentary desk on 205 Live lately, and yeah, he was up against Cassius Ohno here. So Cassius being the current NXT talent, Aiden being the former NXT talent, and of course he tagged with Simon Gotch, and as part of the Vaudevillains. I liked the Vaudevillains. I thought it was a good gimmick. I think the WWE could have and should have done a lot more with them, to be honest with you. But Aiden English has been more well known as part of the Rusev faction. A Rusev Day would introduce Rusev to the ring before all of his matches, and Lana, she got involved, split Aiden English and Rusev up, and Aiden English has been more known for being behind the desk, commentating 205 Live. Now, I've got to say, I think he's definitely growing as a performer behind the desk, and I think he's turned into a very good, talented colour commentator. But it was nice to see him here back in the ring against Luke Harper. But Cassius Ohno did win after a hard-fought match between the two with his rolling elbow, and Cassius Ohno, good to see Cassius get a win there. Nice to see Aiden English in a match though. Then we saw a match between current NXT talent Dominic Dijakovic versus Luke Harper. We spoke about Luke Harper earlier on. Loads of welcome back chants for Luke Harper, and I think this is one of his, if not his first, return match to WWE as part of WWE Access over WrestleMania weekend. This was a really fun and hard-hitting match between these two really big men. There was one spot in the match with Harper dropping hard on the outside with a high-angled slam off of the side of the ring apron. It looked great. It looked pretty rough as well on Dijakovic there. There's even this is awesome chant from the fans at Access. Dijakovic lands on his feet from a top rope suplex from Harper, which was amazing to see. Such a big guy, so agile. Dijakovic also lands a somersault planche over the top rope onto Harper on the outside. Some pretty impressive spots from both men in this match. This impressive match ends with an impressive, how many times can you say impressive in one sentence? Wicked discus lariat from Luke Harper, nailing the current NXT talent Dijakovic for the hard-fought pinfall victory there, and could see Luke Harper get a win. He looked great. I think the fans really enjoyed this match. I really enjoyed this match between these two wrestlers. I wouldn't mind seeing them go at it again. I wouldn't mind seeing Luke Harper drop down, well, move up to the NXT roster and play a bigger part there. But really good match. Definitely match of the night for me. Both men shake hands as the show, as the match comes to an end, showing respect and a sign of sportsmanship. But yeah, I mentioned about Luke Harper's credentials, and what a waste it would be potentially if he does leave the WWE, if he is granted his release. Yeah, but there could be brighter things around the corner for Luke Harper. Then we got Undisputed Era versus Sanity. So I mentioned about Alexander Wolf earlier. This was Alexander Wolf and Killian Dane against Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly. Wolf will no doubt head back to Germany, as mentioned, where he is from, and he's of course exceptionally popular in Germany, especially part of the WXW brand, where he made his name as the Axeman, as member of Ringkampf, and recently made a cameo kind of return to WXW as part of their 16 Karat Gold series of shows in March. He was greeted like a god when he appeared as a surprise for his match against Al Ani for the WXW Shotgun Championship. Wolf came up short on that occasion, but will no doubt head back towards WXW for championship matches when he does finally leave the WWE. However, in this match, Wolf and Killian Dane came up short again in their match against Undisputed Era, O'Reilly and Fish, only for Eric Young to enter the ring after the match to break up the post-match beatdown from the Undisputed Era onto Wolf and Dane. However, as we've seen from Alexander Wolf's statement recently, the trio of Sanity are no more. Then we get kind of the main event of this hour of Worlds Collide, and it was Roderick Strong versus Tyler Breeze. So this was another fun match, definitely deserved to go on last in this episode. Not quite as strong as the opening match between Luke Harper and Dominik Dijakovic. Breeze has been off our screens quite a bit of late, especially since his tag partner Fandango has been struggling to get fit after recovering from an injury. He's been out of action for a number of months now, which, like I said, with the whole Luke Harper Eric Rowan thing, just because one is out, the other one doesn't get used. What sense does that make? It's a real shame that WWE haven't or didn't capitalise on the Tyler Breeze character, the male model gimmick, more than they did. It fell off a cliff from as soon as he debuted on the main roster, despite being one of the biggest success stories in NXT in the day. And after a punishing match for Breeze, with Roderick Strong putting in most of the offence, Tyler Breeze did manage to get the win after an unprettier in a fairly fun match pitting current NXT stars versus former NXT stars, and Tyler Breeze got the win. Great match, surprising win, and yeah, a little bit of a rub there for Tyler Breeze. Then we went to the second episode, which aired midweek on the WWE Network, and it was Cruiserweights Collide. So Cruiserweight, of course, is the WWE, as far as they're concerned, is anybody £205 or lower. And the first match was a really fun match between Tyler Bates and the Brian Kendrick. So it was strange to see a clean-shaven Brian Kendrick going up against the very popular Tyler Bate here. Brian Kendrick losing possibly 10 years just by losing the facial hair, with Kendrick very much the veteran. The commentary team mentions that when Kendrick started training to be a pro wrestler, Tyler Bate was only 2 years old, and they showed a photo in this episode of Tyler Bate meeting Brian Kendrick when he was about 12 or 13 years old, and that was only a couple of years before he actually turned pro himself. A very lively crowd for this match, with both wrestlers having fun with the crowd at WrestleMania Access. There were a few comedy spots in this match, with both wrestlers going for some eye pokes, with Kendrick trying to start a USA chant, which got out chanted into a UK chant. Obviously a lot of UK wrestling fans in the audience there at Access. That's what I like to see. We saw a running standing shooting star press from Tyler Bate. Kendrick, though, thought he had the match won with his captain's hook, but Bate was able to power Kendrick up for an airplane spin, where both men eventually crashed outside the ring through dizziness. Kendrick blocked Bates' first attempt at a slingshot clothesline, but was unable to do anything when Bate went for the slingshot clothesline for the second time before hooking his Tyler Driver 97 in and getting the pinfall victory for the big strong boy over Brian Kendrick here. So that was another really fun match with some comedy spots, some back and forth action from these two very accomplished wrestlers, but in the end Tyler Bate was successful in this fun opening match to Cruiserweights Collide. Then we get a tag match between Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews versus Arya Daivari and Mike Kanellis. So we mentioned about Mike Kanellis, so good to see Mike kind of getting more prominence here in this show and on 205 Live. There's some quick tags for both teams in this match, with excellent double team moves from Flash Morgan and Mark Andrews. There's even a rude awakening neckbreaker from Daivari in this match. Andrews eventually gets the hot tag with a springboard crossbody, taking out both Kanellis and Daivari in the same move, and gets a close near fall from a standing moonsault. Andrews gets another 2 count from an assisted 450. Andrews and Flash hit stereo somersault planches onto the heel combo on the outside, and the end of the match happens when Kanellis nails his own partner with a super kick. Andrews hits Kanellis with a stun dog millionaire, setting up Flash to execute a swanton bomb for the hard-fought victory for the good guys. That was another really fun match that took a while to get going, but nothing wrong with the efforts from both teams here, with my boys from NXT UK taking home the victory. Then we saw a match that I was looking forward to going in. So it was promoted ahead of this show that we'd see pretty much the in-ring debut from Albert Hardy Jr. In a three-way against NXT UK star Ligero, El Ligero on the Indies, but Ligero in the WWE against Cruiserweight Classic finalist Gran Metalik from a few years back. You may remember that's had a prominent role as part of the Lucha House Party on 205 Live and the main roster. Now this, in all honesty, this is the first time that I've seen Albert Hardy Jr. in the flesh, and I've seen clips of him on YouTube, and I've posted on the other day on the Wrestling with John's Facebook page how infectious his personality is. So when I heard about this match, you know, him being the former ACH going up against Ligero, Gran Metalik, I was very excited to watch and to review this match and this show in particular. There were several stiff chops in this match, with Hardy Jr. playing the more aggressor in this match. On one spot in this match, Hardy Jr. launches himself over the top rope onto Metalik, which took Gran Metalik out of the match for a while. However, Metalik come back to wipe out Hardy with a dive through the ropes onto the outside before getting a 2 count on Ligero from a huge top rope splash. Gran Metalik gets a close near fall from his Metalik driver onto Hardy Jr. Ligero nails a tope con hero on Gran Metalik on the outside. Hardy Jr. nearly gets the 3 count from an awesome German suplex. Ligero, however, got the win in this match with a wicked tornado DDT on Hardy Jr., spiking Albert Hardy Jr. onto the top of his head. It was such an awesome DDT that he spiked him on top of his head, and then Hardy Jr. kind of flipped himself into a standing position before falling over again, so did a full rotation after the DDT. That was an excellent match, and a definite treat if you were at Access to see this live in person. And then we had the main event of Cruiserweights Collide, Akira Tozawa versus my guy, one of my favourite people to watch wrestling, whether it's live or on NXT UK, Jordan Devlin. So there were plenty of headlocks mixed with a few stiff kicks in the early going in this main event match between the Irish Ace and the former Cruiserweight champion Akira Tozawa. Devlin soon takes control by ramming his opponent into the guardrail, or the guard railings, and then into the ring on the outside to disable Tozawa. Devlin delivers his trademark Uranagi and then standing moonsault combo for a 2 count. Love it when he does that. Tozawa executes a beautiful Hurricane Rana followed by a Shining Wizard and gets a 2 count from a top rope missile dropkick. Tozawa gets another 2 counts from a neat German suplex, but was blocked from dropping his senton when Devlin brought up his knees before smashing Tozawa with his Devlin driver for the 1-2-3. I love this match. Can't say enough good things about this match. This was my match of the night from the Cruiserweights Collide, and I loved this episode. Devlin did appear to injure his knee from bringing up his knees from Tozawa's senton, but he shook it off. He looked in a lot of pain, though, to be honest with you. But this episode of both episodes really of Worlds Collide, definitely worth a watch. Looking forward to the next one, which I believe is Women's Collide, which should be coming up within the next day or so. But one thing that I picked up on, I think a lot of you picked up on as well, is that all 4 of these matches in Cruiserweights Collide were won by NXT UK talent, which makes me a happy man. Jordan Devlin in the main event, Ligero of course in the 3-way, Andrews and Flash Morgan in the tag match. And then in the first match, just to remind myself, it was Tyler Bates, Big Strong Boy, versus the Brian Kendrick. So 4 really good matches, a good hour of wrestling, to be honest with you. So there you go. That's the first episode of the Wrestling Experience in the can. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share this episode out. Tell your friends. Tell your family. And I will be getting more episodes of the Wrestling Experience out momentarily. Planning to do a weekly episode of kind of some of the hot topics, some of the news of the day, covering some of the shows. We'll probably cover Women's Collide in next week's episode of the Wrestling Experience exclusively here on YouTube. Don't forget that you can get in touch with the show. Give us some feedback about this, give us some feedback about the podcast if you wish. You can email us at wrestlingwithjohners@gmail.com. You can hit the show up on Twitter at withjohners_pod. Follow the show on Instagram, instagram.com/wrestling with Johners, and look out for our Facebook group. Just go out there, search for Wrestling with Johners, and hit that icon, and be part of one of the most interactive, fun Facebook wrestling groups out there today. So I'll be back again soon for another episode of the Wrestling Experience. Don't forget to check out Wrestling with Johners podcast if you haven't done so already on all major podcast platforms. And whatever you do, have a great week. In the meantime, take care, and I'll speak to you all soon.